Hello and welcome to Life Stories. On today's episode, you might just recognise my guest as he was Albert Square's medic, Dr. Truman, in BBC One's long-running soap EastEnders. His softly spoken, tender bedside manner made him a target for many of Walford's ladies, causing temperatures to rise steeply and leaving many broken-hearted. But there is more to this dishy doc than meets the eye. He is also a successful entrepreneur who uses his creative spirit to inspire the next generation of business leaders. Please welcome Nick Bailey. Well, Nick, welcome to Life Stories and Big Centre TV. Now, you are a classically trained actor. So do you ever get just a tiny bit annoyed when people come up to you and say, hello, Dr. Truman?
No, not at all. It's funny because the majority of people that come up to say hello, they know me from the show, even though I've done a range of other things. So they think of me as Dr. Truman, and they even approach me as if I'm Dr. Truman. So everybody's very polite, and they politely ask me for a selfie or whatever. But it never gets tiresome. It's it was a massive privilege, and I had a fantastic time doing it, and it's part of my story. I was very lucky.
We'll talk more about EastEnders a little bit later on, but first of all, let's hear about your childhood here in Birmingham. You were born in the 1970s. So how about those early years?
Well, I was born in actually in Hallam Hospital in West Bromwich, and my father was a Jamaican immigrant. My mother was from St. Lucia. And when I was born in 1971, we moved to Handsworth Wood. And I was there for several years. In fact, my family still lived there. So, yeah, the 70s were great. It was a great time to be alive. It was a great time to be surrounded by family. We had a very tiny family. It was great. It was fantastic. I was educated at Cherry Orchard Primary School in Handsworth Wood. And then I went on to the Bluecoat School in Birmingham. And spent a couple of years there, and then I went out to Old Swinford Hospital in Stourbridge. But I was very lucky to have a great grounding in my education.
I was going to say, did you have some inspirational teachers? Because we're moving on to your love of Shakespeare. So where did that start?
Well, my love of Shakespeare started really at Old Swinford when I moved there. My English teacher, Miss Crosland, was a great inspiration. We happened to be studying it for GCE. We were doing the O-level English literature. And it was Macbeth was the first play that I picked up. And I happened to be starring in an inter-house production of it later on. And I just instantly took to it. So literature was always in my life. I was always into the arts, and I'd always been on stage. So studying a play and being on stage, it was one and the same thing to me, really.
And were you alone in your love of Shakespeare and literature at this point, or was there a group of boys, a bit like, sometimes you get almost a club of youngsters who enjoy literature?
Well, we had a lot of clubs at my school, but we didn't have anything like that. I'm sure I wasn't alone, but it certainly felt that way. I mean, I think for the majority of lads at my school, it was all about, what do I need to learn to get these grades and move on to university? It was like, they had a can-do attitude around that, but few people took the school production seriously, and not as seriously as I did, really, anyway. I used to look forward to the big productions we did every year, and it was a great way for me to express myself creatively, and it gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of resilience as well.
So that teacher really was quite key to what happened next. It's often people who've been very successful, like your good self, often have that teacher that just pushed you along a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, there are catalysts in life, and Miss Crosland was certainly one of those.
That's a second name check for the ladies, so good for you.
Absolutely.
So then you've done your school plays. Were you watching much television at the time?
Yeah, always. And I mean, during the 70s and 80s, we had some fantastic, television was fantastic, and it was exciting. And, we didn't have multi-channel. So the channels were constructed in such a way that there was something for everybody. So you'd be watching Morecambe and Wise one minute, then you'd be watching Starsky and Hutch, depending on what you were into. But it was a fantastic time. I was certainly inspired by entertainment shows and the movies that I saw as well. During the 70s, we had films like Grease and Star Wars, as a young lad growing up, with a vivid imagination, it was, it was candy shop time.
And during that period when you're watching the TV shows, was there an actor or did you see roles within movies and drama series that made you think, I want to be doing what he's doing one day?
Not really, no. As I was growing up, I was an avid watcher of movies. I soaked movies up. I soaked up television. I used to love being on stage. Although I didn't often go to the theatre growing up, I tended to be on stage acting a lot. But I didn't go to the theatre a massive amount. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't anybody who really struck me. But there were actors such as Sidney Poitier and Denzel Washington as I was going into my teens that I saw and I admired. But it wasn't until I was 18 or 19 that I had the realization I wanted to become an actor. I wanted to be a barrister, actually, when I was growing up and doing these productions. I thought drama would be no more than a hobby. Much as I loved it, it was separate to a career. I had to do something else to make money, or so I thought.
At what point did you decide to do the audition for LAMDA? Was it when you were 18 or 19?
Well, I was actually 20 because what happened was I finished my A-levels and quite swiftly afterwards I decided law wasn't for me. I just woke up one day and I realized that I was trying, it was too much like hard work, the idea of becoming a lawyer. So I took the law out of the equation and I thought, well, the thing that attracted me to it was getting up on stage and showing off in front of people, having the chance to be an advocate. So I took some time out to think about what degree I wanted to do. And for about 2 years, I worked in various jobs in Birmingham. I did telesales. I worked at a couple of hotels. I worked at the Pastorificio restaurant in town. So I did a variety of things and made a bit of money along the way. And I ended up at the Department of Law and Regulation at the council. And while I was there, I was surrounded by a group of, I won't call them frustrated actors, they were lovers of performing. They were all performers, they all loved movies, and all we did all day was talk about theatre and film and television. And it was then that I really felt, look, it's been so long since I've been on stage, so I decided to audition for the National Youth Theatre. So I was about 20 when I auditioned. Worst audition of my life. It was a complete disaster, but thankfully they saw something in me. So that summer I started, and when I was there, it was the first time I'd been with a group of people who felt like I did about acting. And people started to ask me, well, which drama school are you going to? I said, well, I'm not. So while I was there, I was inspired to audition. And one drama school was still auditioning, that happened to be LAMDA. And I couldn't wait. So I called them up on the Thursday. I auditioned on the Friday. And on the Monday, I started in the new cohort. This was September 1991. And I never looked back.
Another defining moment. And LAMDA is one of Britain's top drama schools, so you must have done a brilliant audition, so well done on that.
Thank you.
So you went through LAMDA,
Yeah.
Great classical training. What was your first job in the theatre after that?
Well, it came about, in the theatre, it was about a year afterwards. I actually, I was kicked out of LAMDA. I left at the end of the second year, kind of under a cloud. It didn't really work out for me. For a variety of reasons, but really they told me that I would never amount to anything as an actor, and as they were training people in the theatre.
That doesn't get reported, that doesn't get picked up very
No.
much when you do your research notes.
Yeah, not really. But it was another defining moment for me because the same day I left drama school, I went to audition to play Brutus in Julius Caesar at the National Youth Theatre, got the role, and 6 weeks later I had an agent. So I was in the bill by the October, and I finished drama school in the July. So my career started a year before it should have done. But you get crossroads in life, and I decided to make lemonade with that moment. And I use that story as the basis of a motivational speech now for young people. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do.
So you've been in the bill, Coronation Street,
Yeah.
Casualty, on radio, The Archers. You've played many Shakespearean roles. It's been a very, well, there's been a wide cathedral of choice there in the number of things that you've done. And any favourites?
Well, if you talk about stage work, so many. I mean, just before Christmas, I finished a production of Macbeth, playing Macduff in Macbeth at the Mercury Theatre in Colchester. That was a huge highlight. What else? King Lear. I was in King Lear at the National Theatre with Ian Holm playing King Lear in the 90s, which was a huge, just a fantastic opportunity for a young actor. Really enjoyed that.
Well, we'll talk some more about his amazing career in a couple of minutes, but we also want to know about life on Albert Square. We'll be back very shortly. This year celebrates the 30th anniversary of the EastEnders, and my guest today is part of that rich heritage, playing the role of Dishy Doctor, Dr. Truman. Since then, he's been in umpteen TV and radio shows. It's hello again to actor Nick Bailey. So let's go to Albert Square. Did you ever think it would last that long?
Well, I remember watching the first ever episode, and I've talked to people in the cast about this before and people behind the scenes. The success like this, you just can't predict. It's incredible what's happened and that it's been at the top for so long. And you're absolutely right. I feel really privileged to be part of that rich tapestry.
Secret? What's the recipe for such a success?
I once spoke to John York, who was the ex-executive producer of the show, and he's the person who cast me in the show. And he said to me, success in soap is about archetypes. So I think it's about relationships that the audience build with people they can identify with. And that comes from great writing and from great casting as well, from great performances. And I think EastEnders has always stayed at the top because people feel an affinity with the characters. And yeah, I think that's across all soaps. But yeah, it's definitely something to do with building a relationship, having an impact through talking about real life, but in a slightly heightened way. I think that's the formula, really.
So, the real life in a heightened way.
Yes.
In your particular case, I don't want to be, frivolous or anything, but you were a bit of a naughty boy, weren't you?
Yes, I had a tendency to be quite naughty. Yes, but I enjoyed it. I had some fantastic storylines, and I was cast. The Truman family was built at around the same time as the Slater family was built, and it was all part of John's master plan. And I had fantastic stroke of luck being paired with Jesse Wallace and with the Slater family, because around that time it was just a great time to be in the show. There were some great storylines: Who Shot Phil, You're Not My Mother. These things were happening at the same time. So yeah, it was tremendous. But he was a bit of a naughty boy. But what I liked about him was the fact that the naughty boy was under the surface. He was a bit like a pressure cooker, and trying to be respectable, but underneath he did have that slice of prodigal son.
In a drama series like EastEnders, did you have any input into the storylines? Were there any workshops where you were talking about your character to the script editors? I mean, was there a two-way street in creative ideas?
Not particularly, although when I was in the casting process, there were 3 auditions that I went to over the space of 10 days, and we did a lot of improvisation and a lot of work with other actors as well, playing the Doctor, where I got a sense of who this person might be. I don't know if that went into it, but there was a great team of writers on the show, then as now. And over time, you get to know what your character would or wouldn't do. So, very rarely you'd say, for instance, why is he doing that? You'd question certain things. But for instance, somebody like Rudolph Walker has been playing Patrick now for nearly 15 years. I mean, he knows his character inside out, but the writers will match his performance so they get everything just right.
And was there any freedom in changing the lines or improvising in a way to just change things to the way you thought the character should deliver that line?
Well, there'd be suggestions and talks with the producer on the episode or whatever else, mostly around clarity, just thinking about what things meant. Why was this the case? Because you've got to know, when you're playing a character, as you know, you've got to know their motivations. You've got to know if there's something that you don't understand, you need to understand that in order to perform it. So yeah, there was all of that. You know, there were conversations on set for sure, but by and large, like I said, the writing was great. So you just got the script, you learnt it, and you got on with it. Sometimes you get changes, or you get pink or green or yellow pages just before you went on, and you just got on with it.
Talk us through a typical day's filming. You know, the call time and through to the end of the shoot.
If you're doing a full day, if you're in first scene of the day, you turn up at the set, you go through security and straight to your dressing room, essentially, to get ready. You'd have your script, you have your lines learnt, hopefully. If not, you'd line everything up ready to go, and then you'd be on set for sort of around 7:30, I believe, around that time. And you'd begin, well, first of all, you do costume and makeup, so you'd spend about 15 minutes in makeup and then go to costume, or the other way around. And then a runner would come and get you and take you onto set. But the days were long. So if you had a gap in filming, you might say, okay, I've got 2 scenes off, and you look at, it's 4 pages, it could be an hour, or it could be 3 hours, or it could be half an hour, you just don't know. So you're on standby all day long. But yeah, they tend to film blocks of footage around certain locations. So for instance, Monday used to be Vic Day. So all the scenes from the block of 4 episodes in the Vic were filmed on a Monday. So, and they were all out of sequence. So we had a great team helping us to just know where we were supposed to be, sometimes bodily being shifted from one place to another, because, you know, you've got all the lines in your head and you're trying to get context. So you have a laughing scene after a crying scene, and you're thinking, okay, oh, that scene actually comes before. So, you know, you're trying to work things out. But it's a pressure cooker in time's money. So you need to be on your A game. And we're lucky enough to have a great team. So it's very lean. There's no space for hanging around. We've got to get on with it. So if you're last scene of the day and, you know, you're half an hour down, you've got to get it, you've got to bag it, otherwise it's got to go through into another day and there's more hassle. So it's a really tight ship, it has to be.
Talking about those lines in your head, I know that at times you've had some problems with insomnia. Did that make you tired during the daytime, and did you have some problems remembering your lines at times?
Well, not particularly as such. I mean, this story about my insomnia came out of a relationship that built with a guy that was developing insomnia hacking techniques, if you like, using alpha waves, and the science behind it and stuff. I like to think of it being more about resilience. So it's more about the fact that I think you've got to be organized, and I think you've got to take care of how you wind down at the end of a day. It's funny because as soon as I started working out more often and hydrating a little better and just being a bit more organized, things start to dissipate. So I think it was more lifestyle than actual proper insomnia, although I did have episodes where I couldn't get to sleep because I'm a night person. So, but you're working all day.
Diet, drinking plenty of water.
It's really important, especially when you, I mean, you're like a racehorse in, you know, if you look across the span of drama, if you're on a soap, there's no time for anything else. When you're not on set, you're learning lines and into the evening as well. So you have to be, you have to take care of yourself.
Now, you decided, it wasn't the editors or the script writers, you decided to leave EastEnders. What was that all about?
I sure did. Well, I just felt, I knew I had a brand new contract that was going to be written up, and that they'd offer me another year in the show. I was quite established as a character. Things had been going well, although I was no longer working with the Slater family as much. And I wouldn't say it was a job for life, but I knew I would get a new contract, and that came to pass. But I suddenly just sat down and thought about what I'd done with the character, the journey I'd taken. And I thought I'd done just about everything I could do with the character, to be honest with you.
So looking back, what are you most proud of?
One of the things I'm most proud of is a project I'm currently involved in called Multicultural Shakespeare, or the British Black and Asian Shakespeare Project. And essentially it's a research project. We're trying to find all the forgotten histories of the great Black and Asian performers that have performed in various Shakespearean roles since 1930, and Paul Robeson in Othello. So I'm hugely and immensely proud to be involved in that project, running out of the University of Warwick.
And do you think there's a fair balance of black and Asian actors in Shakespearean roles, for example, in this country?
Well, I think if you take the time when I left drama school, 1993 to now, I don't think it's good as it was when I left. And it's not so much a quota thing, it's more to do with just an openness in terms of casting and the realization of artistic ideas, really. I don't think there are enough black and Asian artists on stage. And I think we need more black and Asian theatre companies expressing Shakespeare as well. And I think black and Asian kids and kids from other groups as well need to see themselves better and more reflected on stage in Shakespeare so that they can get context and see themselves on stage.
Well, that's a great forum to be debating in. So Nick, as we close the show, what next? You're involved in some quite definite business opportunities at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I went into 2011 to the University of Birmingham, and I graduated with an MBA in international business, and that was a transformational experience, another crossroads, if you will. And I decided to go into consulting, so I started to work as a leadership consultant, using drama as a means to train executives in companies. So everything from presentation skills, communication skills, all the way through to leadership development. And at the moment, I'm setting up my own drama school, if you like.
Well, the very best for the future. Tremendous career to date and many more exciting things to come. Nick Bailey, thank you very much indeed for telling us your life story.